all of you guys and present Alexandra Lalos, who will be our moderator for the event. Alexandra is an extremely insightful and knowledgeable leader when it comes to hospitality. So I'm going to hand over the batuta, as they say in Puerto Rican.
I think to get our conversation started, and I'm sure a lot of people here are just wondering in general what's going on right now in the Caribbean. I'm going to pass it over to Christian Shar, who's prepared a couple of slides for you all, just to give you a sense, a little macro overview of what's going on in the Caribbean. So Christian, take it away.
Let's go into it. So very quickly here, the COVID-19, nothing can compare to what we've been experiencing with this pandemic. This slide very quickly shows you the international tourist arrival by region. As you can see, across the world, the impact has been severe, more than severe, has been dramatic. And the interesting part here is the Caribbean, of all the regions in the world, has performed better. And one of the reasons for that, you may say, is why is Europe has many countries still in lockdown. Asia Pacific is impossible to travel. If you want to go to Hong Kong today, you could, you have to spend 3 weeks in a room and you cannot go out 3 meals a day in your room. So it's quite quasi impossible to reach the region. And they're doing that in terms of protecting the region in Asia Pacific. So as you can see, the Caribbean has been performing better than anybody else, but still a dramatic drop that has never been seen in a very, very long time. Next one, which island is open? 80% of the island in the Caribbean are open. They do have a protocol. The majority of them outside of Dominican Republic require a negative COVID test between 3 and 5 days old before boarding the plane and going to the island. The COVID arrives in this part of the hemisphere in March, drop of 55%, but imagine the dramatic drop in the arrival in the Caribbean, down 99% in April, May 98.3. So the second quarter was absolutely terrible. You can see some recovery. July, August, and September, we're seeing some sign of life. And the drop is still dramatic, but better. And as we move forward, we start to see some life in the region in some cases. Bermuda down 84%. The US Virgin Islands saw for the year only a drop of 36.5%. So you may ask why. It's a combination of two things. Very little supply. St. Thomas, the largest hotel, Frenchman's Reef, is closed and has been closed since the hurricane Maria, and has not reopened. The Sugar Bay also in St. Thomas is closed. So you have really the Ritz-Carlton, a few small hotels, the Margaritaville, the Westin in St. John. So very little supply, but also because the majority of the tourists going there are American, they felt comfortable to travel during the pandemic to the island. One, because everybody boarding a plane, you need to have a negative COVID test to land on the island. And number two, the biggest fear of international traveler was to be stuck in some foreign countries with restrictive quarantine rules. So next slide shows the market performance year over year in terms of occupancy, RevPAR, and rate. As you can see, 2020 occupancy for the region was 30%. The interesting part is the rate went up by 2.4% to 225.63, as you can see. 56% of respondents are saying they're ready to book now, even if it means canceling in the future. People are at home and willing to travel this summer. And this booking is increasing every day as the vaccine is being rolled out. I leave you with this thought that 2.3 trillion, more than ever, is parked in saving accounts, has been saved during the COVID and pandemic. And this money, 2021, 2022, as soon as the border reopen and the vaccine is being rolled out, I think will, the whole hospitality industry will benefit from all the stress and the fact that they could not travel in 2020. So I'm expecting that the end of 2021 and 2022 will be a banner year for the region and a banner year for the hospitality. With that,
I thought one slide that was interesting was the note you made about GDP, and so I asked Rogerio, from your perspective as a development bank, what's your sort of sense of the state of the region?
Yeah, that's an excellent segue. Very good points, Christian. I think our general concern is that there is this lurking dark cloud on top of Caribbean and Latin America, and we refer to it as the impact of the triple sudden stop. What does that mean? Is that we were affected by human mobility because we had all of the confinements, the travel restrictions, the lockdowns. You had the affectation of trade. General volumes of trade across the world were affected, and commodity prices significantly came down. And then you had financial flows. Think about all of the remittances that were coming from North America and other places back to Caribbean, Latin America. So what is the silver lining? Much like Christian said at the beginning, tourism is the answer. And in the Caribbean, where you have countries that where tourism represents as much as 38% of the economy pre-pandemic, and this is a sector that has been completely decimated, still tourism is the answer to be able to re-inject economic returns and GDP into the region. What we're thinking is that as you have more vaccinations, as you see some of the initiatives such as the ones that the Dominican Republic is doing in terms to be able to obtain a significant amount of vaccines and get significant portion of the population vaccinated, there is going to be a natural opening of borders. There's going to be an increase in tourism activity, and the trickle effect that tourism has in the economy, not only with employment, but working the entire value chain, the ability to generate indirect jobs, that is extremely potent. So tourism still is the answer for the Caribbean in order for us to resurface from this crisis.
Good question, Alex. Thank you. The beauty is in the eye of the beholder. But deals are getting done. Yes, I mean, actually, very surprising. During the pandemic, the first large transaction anywhere in North America was in Jamaica, where we sold two playa property to Jewel all-inclusive resort. And at the end of the year, we also sold Cuisinart in Anguilla, a fairly large transaction. So deals are getting done even during a pandemic, which may be surprising. I think there is I would say I've been in the region for 20 years, and I've never seen in the last 5 years so much interest in the region in terms of real estate during the good time and the bad time. Certainly, the pandemic is in the category of bad time, but the interest, which is bodes well for our industry. People believe there'll be recovery. Investor believes that the Caribbean is here to stay and will be a prevalent player in the hospitality industry for the future to come. I'll give you another data point. The Caribbean has a reputation and historically has been, there's been a lack of liquidity. So financing is very low leverage, if it exists at all. Every island is different. I mean, if you buy and transact in the Cayman, liquidity exists because it's a financing center, and institutional players are very comfortable with that. When you go to Jamaica, liquidity becomes a big issue. And up and down the Caribbean, you do have an issue when it comes to transaction because it takes longer. You are playing in different jurisdictions. Approval have to come. And financing is the biggest nugget to crack when it comes down to the island. But the good news is you have a serious player who are willing to go all cash to start and to take the time to put the financing afterward. Is where transaction happen. I mean, Sandals was all cash. Cuisinart was all cash. Frenchman's Reef is probably going to be an all cash transaction. Doesn't mean that financing will not be put later on and leverage would exist. But many of the interested investors want to quickly take over the property, make the changes during the pandemic to be able to reopen during the next strong season of 2021, 2022. And we see the interest level has not faded. I mean, we still see a lot of interest in the region.
Similar question, you know, are deals getting done, and what sort of markets are most attractive to investors and developers today? And then we'll circle back to Rogério to hear a little bit more about the challenges on the financing side that Christian mentioned. So Juan, let's hear what your perspectives are right now.
I've been taking some notes. I just, 11% of Americans are now officially vaccinated. 100 million plus doses have been inoculated in people's arms. Anybody that was like I was in Miami airport last week saw that tourism is back. People that have been vaccinated, especially people that are retired, are now going because they've lost a year. And they're traveling to the Caribbean. I've been traveling throughout the pandemic, and I can tell you, number one, deals are getting done. And number two, people want to leave their houses. They cannot stay anymore in their houses, and they're going to Puerto Rico, they're going to the Dominican Republic, they're going to those islands that allow them some distancing and that allow them to be out in the sun. They do not want to remain in the mainland. So Miami Airport, Charlotte Airport, and any airport that connects with the Caribbean, if you just stand there in the lobby of arrivals or departures, you're going to see people with their suitcases and with their hats on, and they're going to warmer weather, even when spring is happening. So that recovery has already started. We're seeing bookings during the second semester starting to, go on an upward trajectory. I'm seeing islands with sold outs in January, which means people are booking their Christmas vacation. Yes, it's been a horrible year. It's been a year to write off. But the good thing about this year, and I'm going to respond to your question, yes, deals are happening, is that the lenders understood what they did in 2008, 2009. They took on, did deeds in lieu, they foreclosed. Banks and lenders have understood that they do not want to be the holders of hospitality assets in their balance sheet because they do not understand them. You need a developer, you need a private company, or you need a fund to manage those assets and give them their optimum value, which means that their forbearances that have been given have been great for the owners, but also they've been helping the banks not having to load them onto their balance sheet. What that means is I think we have a little bit more of air for this season to kick in. No bank wants to take a hotel on their balance sheet. And if there's a bank that wants to do it, I mean, the situation must be very dire, but we have an opportunity for recovery. We're talking about deals getting done last year for Hilton, we grew at 5% of our annual rooms inventory, which was, it was industry breaking in that same year. And the reason why is because we kept a steady hand of the wheel. Conversions in Caribbean, Latin America were 49% of the deals we did in the number of rooms. And we did a record year of signings, 9% over the year before. 2019 versus 2020, we signed more deals in 2020. And that's because people understood that recovery was going to take some time, and they needed to come to what I call the warm waters of a network in order to come out. But we're going to have a good second semester of the year. And I truly believe it, seeing what's happening out there. So that's been my positive spin on it. But yes, deals are getting done and investors are still interested. So we continue working at it and chipping at it.
As we pivot this conversation to talk a little bit more about the real estate side, Brad, why should investors be interested in investing in Puerto Rico today? And I think you've had some conversations with investors who have started to come back to the island and want to be there. So, why should people on this call be considering real estate investment in Puerto Rico?
We're encouraged that airline capacity is there. We're encouraged that the forward-looking booking trends are certainly much more positive. And if I look at, there is demand for that higher end product, and whether it's in the hotel side or in the independent rental side, the 4+ bedroom independent rental units, we're seeing an ADR of over $550, And when you consider that, and then the fact that a lot of those 3 and 4 bedroom units have accounted for much of the demand, an increasing portion of the demand, I think what that tells you is that the mix of visitors to Puerto Rico has shifted somewhat. And whether that will continue in the independent rental side or whether we'll see more capacity in the hotel side, I guess is probably to be determined by some of the people on this call. But it's very, very encouraging to me that when you think about where the island was 3, 4, 5 years ago, after a lot of natural disasters and some human challenges as well, you know, with the bankruptcy and other things, and you fast forward to 2019 record demand, now 2021, we're starting to see the market come back. And to pick up on what Rogerio said earlier, just anecdotally and looking at the forward-looking bookings, we're not suggesting that 2021 second half is going to be a record, but we are sensing it's going to be a very, very strong recovery and a fast recovery. And if it's anything like what we saw between 2017 and 19, put your roller skates on, because there's some good things happening in the Caribbean and particularly in Puerto Rico.
Take your silver lining that tourism is the answer, and that 38% of the economies are reliant on tourism. So I think that's kind of where we as a group can help to push things forward. And some of the statements, you know, Brad made about focusing on what consumers are really looking for today, I think is what our challenge is as builders, developers, investors. I mean, we've had this world traumatic experience, and now it's our job to kind of give consumers really what they're looking for. On Hilton's record year, at least year equivalent to 2019 in signings, that just says it all. I mean, we are moving all of us back to hospitality in a big way. And even though that transaction volume is low, I think the opportunities are for lending, right? So how is lending going to come back and fill those gaps that are needed? So those are kind of my takeaways. Again, I just wanted to thank all of you. This has really been, again, a very special time. And I thank you very, very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.